At my husband's funeral, a woman approached me and said, "I'm his wife too," and she pulled out a marriage certificate. The date? Same year, same month as mine. In that moment, my entire world shattered into 1,000 pieces. The black veil slipped from my trembling fingers and fell to the wet grass. My knees began to buckle beneath me. My daughter Sarah grabbed my arm, trying to hold me upright, while I could only stare at the document in that woman's hand. Red seals, official stamps, and my husband's signature. The same signature that sat next to mine on a certificate locked away in our safe deposit box. 30 years. I had been married to this man for 30 whole years. My name is Margaret Hayes, though David always called me Maggie. I'm 58 years old, and until 6 days ago, I believed I had lived the happiest moments of my life with David Harrison. Until that funeral, until that woman, until everything I thought I knew turned out to be an elaborate lie constructed over 3 decades. David and I got married in the spring of 1993. I remember the cherry blossoms were in full bloom that day, painting the courthouse steps in shades of pink and white. It was a modest ceremony, just our immediate families and a handful of close friends. I didn't even wear a traditional white wedding dress. Instead, I chose a simple pale pink dress, elegant but understated, from a department store sale rack. David wore his only navy suit, the one he'd bought for job interviews. He stood beside me, looked deep into my eyes, and said the words that would echo through my mind for the rest of my life. "I'll be with you until death do us part." And I believed him. Completely, unconditionally, without a single shadow of doubt. Our first years together were financially challenging but emotionally rich. David worked in construction, taking whatever jobs he could find. I was a kindergarten teacher at the local elementary school, making barely enough to cover groceries. We lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that clanked all night during winter. We didn't even own a television for the first 2 years, but we didn't need one. Our evenings were filled with radio music, dancing in our cramped living room, and sharing dreams about the future we would build together. David would hold me close and whisper, "One day, Maggie, I'm going to buy you a big, beautiful house with a garden." Maggie. He was the only person who called me that. "Margaret is too formal," he'd say, with that crooked smile. "You're my Maggie." Sarah was born in 1995, on a crisp October morning that changed everything. I remember David in the delivery room, tears streaming down his face as he held our daughter for the first time. His hands were shaking so badly as if he were holding the most fragile piece of crystal in existence. "I have 2 princesses now," he whispered, kissing my forehead. 2 years later, Michael came along. David was overjoyed to have a son. He couldn't wait to teach him how to play football, how to ride a bike, how to be a man. And he did all those things. Every Saturday morning at 6 o'clock sharp, David would wake up, make pancakes, and take Michael to the park. I would watch them from our kitchen window, my heart swelling with love as I saw my husband patiently teaching our son to kick a ball. Perfect father, perfect husband, or so I thought. By the early 2000s, David's career was finally taking off. He started his own small construction company, Harrison & Sons, even though our sons was just Michael, who was barely 6 years old. He started with small jobs, bathroom renovations, kitchen remodels, small residential projects. But then bigger contracts started coming in, commercial buildings, apartment complexes, office renovations. When he landed his first major contract, he came home with a bottle of champagne, something we'd never been able to afford before. "We did it, Maggie," he shouted as he burst through the door, his face glowing with pride. "I can finally buy you that house I promised." And he did. In 2003, we moved into a beautiful suburban home with 3 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, and a backyard with white picket fences. It looked like something straight out of an American Dream catalog. I planted tomatoes in the garden. David grilled steaks on summer weekends. The children came home from school laughing and running through the front door. But David's success came with a price. His work required frequent travel, or so he said. "I've got projects in other cities, sweetheart," he'd explain, packing his overnight bag for the 3rd time that week. "I need to meet with clients face to face. You know how important these relationships are for the business." And I understood. I was the supportive wife. I knew that success required sacrifice. What did it matter if he was home 3 or 4 days a week and away for the rest? When he returned, he always brought gifts. Flowers from airport shops, perfume from hotel boutiques, little trinkets that said, "I thought of you," and I would hug him tight and tell him how much I'd missed him, never once questioning where he'd really been. The years passed in this pattern. Sarah went to college, graduated, became a pediatrician. Michael became a civil engineer. David and I grew older together, or at least I thought we were growing older together, but our love never seemed to age. Every anniversary, we went to the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. David always reserved the same corner table. "This is our spot, Maggie," he'd say, reaching across the red checkered tablecloth to hold my hand. On our last anniversary, our 30th, he held my hand and said with tears in his eyes, "Every year with you has been a gift." I see now. Those might have been tears of guilt. The day David had his heart attack was a Monday, a cold February morning that started like any other. He kissed me goodbye at 7:30, grabbed his travel mug of coffee, and headed to a site inspection downtown. At 2:17 p.m., my phone rang. It was Sarah, and her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Mom, Dad's in the hospital. You need to come right now. Massive heart attack. Sudden, unexpected, catastrophic." By the time I got to the hospital, David was already in the ICU, hooked up to so many machines I could barely see his face. I held his cold hand and whispered, "David, please don't leave me. I'm not ready. We're not finished yet. But ready or not, death doesn't wait for anyone." David died that night at 11:47 p.m., with me, Sarah, and Michael by his side. The funeral preparations passed in a fog. Sarah and Michael handled everything while I sat in our bedroom, staring at 30 years of photographs. Vacations to the Grand Canyon, birthday parties, Christmases. In every single picture, we were smiling. We looked happy. We looked like we were in love. Was any of it real? Or was I just a supporting actress in David's elaborate performance? The funeral was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. I wore a simple black dress, the pearls David had given me for our 20th anniversary, and his favorite perfume. I pulled my hair back in a neat bun, the way he'd always liked it. Sarah stood beside me the entire time, holding my hand so tight I thought she might break my fingers. Michael wore his father's old watch and tried desperately not to cry, wanting to be strong for me. The funeral home was packed. David's business associates, old neighbors, friends from our church, people I barely recognized. Everyone offering condolences. He was such a good man. He loved you so much. Such a terrible loss. The words floated around me, but none of them felt real. Nothing felt real anymore. We moved to the graveside service. The casket was closed. I couldn't bear to see David's body one more time. I wanted to remember him alive, laughing, full of life and promises. The pastor began his sermon, summarizing David's life in neat, digestible paragraphs. Loving husband, devoted father, successful businessman, pillar of the community. Everyone cried. I cried too, though I felt strangely disconnected from my own tears, as if I were watching someone else's grief from a distance. The casket was being lowered into the ground. The pastor was saying something about ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's when she appeared. A woman in a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat, her face half hidden behind a dark veil. She stood at the edge of the crowd for a moment, watching. Then, as the pastor spoke the final words, she walked directly toward me. People parted to let her through. She stopped right beside me, so close I could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that I didn't recognize. "Are you Margaret?" she asked in a low voice. I turned to look at her, confused. "Yes, I'm sorry, do I know you?" She lifted her veil slowly, revealing a face I'd never seen before. She was attractive, probably in her mid-50s, with dark hair swept back in an elegant chignon. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she spoke words that would change everything. "I'm David's wife, too." At first, I didn't process what she'd said. The words didn't make sense. "I'm sorry, what?" The woman reached into her black leather purse and pulled out a document. A marriage certificate. Red cover, official seals, the works. "I'm also his wife," she repeated, her voice eerily calm, as if she were commenting on the weather. "Here's the proof." She opened the certificate and held it in front of my face. There was David's name, printed in official type, David Michael Harrison, and beside it another name, Rebecca Ann Turner. Marriage date, May 18th, 1993. The same year as my marriage. The same month. Just 3 weeks difference. The world tilted sideways. Or maybe I tilted. I couldn't tell anymore. I heard Sarah's voice from somewhere far away. "Mom!" "Mom, what's happening?" But I couldn't answer. My eyes were locked on that document, on David's signature, that familiar scrawl with the looping D and the rushed final letters. It was real. This was real. That's impossible, I whispered, though even as I said it, I knew it wasn't impossible at all. It was just improbable. David was married to me. For 30 years, he was married to me. Rebecca looked at me with something that might have been pity. I could say exactly the same thing. He was married to me for 30 years, too. And we have 3 children together. 3 children. I had 2 children. David had 5 children. And 2 wives. How was this even possible? How could one man maintain 2 entirely separate families for 3 decades without either of us knowing? Michael stepped forward aggressively. Who the hell are you? What do you want? Rebecca didn't flinch. I just came to bury my husband. Just like you. Sarah fumbled in her purse and pulled out our marriage certificate. We'd brought it because the lawyer had requested it for the estate proceedings. Now 2 documents lay side by side in the dying afternoon light. Margaret Hayes and David Harrison, April 28, 1993. Rebecca Turner and David Harrison, May 18, 1993. 2 legal marriages. Same man, same year. Even the pastor stopped mid-prayer. People around us started whispering frantically. Did she say wife? 2 wives? That can't be legal. One must be fake. But neither was fake. Both were horrifyingly, devastatingly real. Rebecca spoke again, her voice steady and matter-of-fact. David came to me every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, he was with you. My mind raced back through 30 years of scheduling. No, David was home Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Those were family days. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, he was usually traveling for business or at job sites in other cities. The perfect split. 3 days with her, 4 days with me. And we'd never known. I felt bile rising in my throat. I stumbled away from the graveside, barely making it behind a large oak tree before I vomited into the grass. 30 years of marriage. 30 years of memories. 30 years of believing I knew the man I slept next to every night. All of it was a lie. All of it. Sarah followed me, rubbing my back as I heaved. Mom, breathe. This has to be some kind of mistake. Some kind of scam. But it wasn't a scam. When we returned to the graveside, Rebecca was still there. And now 3 young adults stood beside her. Her oldest son looked remarkably like David, with the same broad shoulders and dark brown eyes. Her 2 daughters had Rebecca's dark hair and olive complexion. They were David's children. I could see it in their faces. They were my children's half-siblings, and none of us had ever known the others existed. Children, Rebecca said formally, gesturing toward us. This is Margaret and her family. Your father's. Other family, other family. The words hung in the air like a curse. I was the other family. Or maybe she was the other family. Or maybe we both were. Maybe David had a 3rd family somewhere. Maybe a 4th? How could I possibly know? I didn't know anything anymore. Rebecca's oldest son, a young man who looked to be in his late 20s, spoke up. Our father lived in Riverside, he said. He told us he worked construction there. Had an office and everything, Riverside. That was only 45 minutes away from our house. For 30 years, David had lived a second complete life less than an hour's drive from our front door. How? I managed to croak out. How did he do this? Rebecca answered, and for the first time I heard pain beneath her calm exterior. He said he worked in construction. He told me he had projects all over the state. That's why he couldn't be home Monday through Wednesday. He had to be on site, meeting with contractors and clients. I believed him. For 30 years, I believed him. The same story. The exact same lie. David had told both of us the same excuse, and we'd both accepted it without question. The construction business was real. The company was real. But the travel was fiction. David hadn't been traveling. He'd been commuting between 2 complete lives, 2 families, 2 homes. The funeral dissolved into chaos. People left in shocked clusters, whispering and staring. The pastor mumbled something about God's mysterious ways and fled to his car. Sarah and Michael practically carried me to our car, while Rebecca and her children got into a black sedan parked nearby. But before she left, Rebecca approached me one more time. We need to talk, she said quietly. There's a lot we need to figure out. The will, the assets, the properties, everything. I can't, I said, my voice breaking. I can't do this right now. I understand. But the lawyers are reading the will on Monday, 10 a.m. at Miller & Associates downtown. You're listed as a beneficiary. So am I. We both need to be there. The will, the estate, money and property and all the practical matters of death. I couldn't think about any of it. All I could think about was the fact that the man I'd loved for 30 years had been living a double life. 2 wives, 2 families. 2 complete existences, and he'd pulled it off perfectly until the moment his heart stopped beating. When we got home, I went straight to our bedroom and collapsed on David's side of the bed. His pillow still smelled like him, that mixture of aftershave and the mint shampoo he'd always used. But now that familiar scent made me feel sick instead of comforted. Had Rebecca also bought him that same shampoo? Did she also wash his shirts and fold his underwear and pack his lunches? Downstairs, I could hear Sarah and Michael talking in urgent, hushed voices. How is this possible? How did he hide it? How did Mom not know? How could anyone know? He was obviously a professional liar. Someone was crying. Michael, I thought, my strong son who never cried, finally breaking down. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rebecca's face, her marriage certificate, David's signature. In the early morning hours, around 5 a.m., I got up and opened David's closet. All his suits were still hanging there, pressed and ready for a man who would never wear them again. Which ones had he worn to Riverside? Which ones had stayed here? I started pulling out his dress shirts, checking the pockets for clues I'd missed. Some of them had a faint perfume scent that wasn't mine, Rebecca's perfume. But maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe I was imagining things, seeing conspiracies where there were none. Maybe Rebecca was a con artist who'd somehow forged documents to steal from David's estate. Yes, that must be it. David would never betray me like this. Not for 30 years. Not every single day of our marriage. The man who'd cried when Sarah was born, who'd taught Michael to ride a bike, who'd slow danced with me in our kitchen on random Tuesday nights. That man couldn't be a liar. Could he? My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Mom, you need to go to the lawyer's office on Monday. I'm coming with you. We need answers. I didn't reply. I just set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the boxes in our attic. David's boxes. His old papers and documents that I'd never bothered to look through because they were boring business stuff. Maybe there were answers up there. Maybe there was proof that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. On Saturday morning, I climbed into our dusty attic and pulled down every box labeled with David's name. For hours, I sat on the floor surrounded by his paper trail, looking for something, anything, that would make sense of this nightmare. And I found it. Bills from Riverside. Electric bills, water bills, property tax statements. David Harrison, 237 Maple Street, Riverside, CA. His name. Not our address. Another house. Rebecca's house. I kept digging like an archaeologist, excavating ruins of my own life. More bills. Gas, phone, internet. All addressed to 237 Maple Street. All in David's name. He'd set up that house. He'd paid for that house. Just like he'd set up and paid for our house. Then came the photographs, and that's when whatever remained of my heart finally shattered completely. Old photos from the early 90s. A young David, barely 30, smiling at the camera. And beside him, Rebecca, equally young and radiant. They were at a beach somewhere, his arm around her shoulders. Just like the photos of us from our honeymoon. More photos. Rebecca pregnant, David's hand on her swollen belly, his face glowing with joy. Exactly like the photos from when I was pregnant with Sarah. A baby photo. David holding an infant, his face soft with love. On the back, someone had written in blue ink, Daniel, 6 months old. Our first father-son photo. Daniel. Rebecca's eldest son was named Daniel. I kept going through the boxes, my hands shaking, tears streaming down my face. More photos, 2 families, 2 lives, 2 versions of Margaret. No, 1 Margaret and 1 Rebecca. But to David, was there really any difference? Were we both just roles he played? Characters in his elaborate 30-year performance? Sarah found me there, surrounded by evidence of her father's betrayal. Mom, what are you doing? Then she saw the boxes. The photos. The bills. She picked up a photo of young David with baby Daniel. She stared at it for a long moment. This is Dad. But who is this woman? Who is this baby? Rebecca, I said, my voice hollow. Your father's other wife. And Daniel. Your half-brother. Sarah sank to the floor beside me. No, this can't be real. But it was real. Every document, every photo, every bill was agonizingly, undeniably real. David Harrison had lived 2 separate lives for 3 full decades. 2 wives, 2 families, 2 homes. And none of us had ever suspected a thing. On Sunday, Sarah, Michael, and I sat at our kitchen table and pieced together the pattern of David's lies. We created a calendar, mapping out his schedule. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Rebecca. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, us. Occasionally, there were business trips that lasted 3 or 4 days. Where had he been during those trips? Was there a third family? A third wife we hadn't discovered yet? The thought made me want to vomit again. Dad was a monster, Michael said, his voice raw with pain. I looked up to him my whole life. I wanted to be just like him. And he was nothing but a lying piece of shit. Sarah was crying quietly. How did Mom not know? 30 years. How do you not know for 30 years? I hadn't known because David was perfect at deception. He never slipped up. His phone was always passworded, always locked. Client confidentiality, he'd say whenever I glanced at his screen. His email was private. His computer was secured. Important project files, sweetheart. Company security. We'd never questioned any of it. Why would we? We trusted him completely. That evening my phone rang. It was Rebecca. Tomorrow we'll get some answers, she said. Be prepared. The lawyer is going to explain everything about the estate. And I have things to show you. Documents, photos. Maybe you have things to show me too? I found photos, I said quietly. Bills, evidence. So did I, Rebecca replied. I think we were both fooled. But I keep wondering, were we the only ones? That thought hadn't occurred to me, but now it took root in my mind like a poisonous seed. Could there be more than 2 families? No, that was impossible. Managing 2 families was already impossibly complicated. 3 or more would be absolutely unfeasible, wouldn't it? Monday morning arrived too quickly. I dressed in black slacks and a white blouse, pulled my hair back, skipped makeup. Sarah was coming with me. Michael had to work but made me promise to tell him everything. When we arrived at Miller & Associates, Rebecca was already there in the waiting room. Her 3 children sat beside her, Daniel, Emma, and Sophie. They all looked exhausted and heartbroken, mirror images of how I felt. We sat on opposite sides of the waiting room, not speaking, the silence heavy and uncomfortable. Attorney Jeffrey Miller was an older man with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He called us all into his conference room. On one side of the long table, me and Sarah. On the other side, Rebecca and her children. In the middle, David's file. Our entire lives reduced to a manila folder. Ladies and gentlemen, Miller began, folding his hands on the table. This is, without question, one of the most unusual situations I've encountered in 35 years of practicing law. Mr. David Harrison maintained 2 legal marriages simultaneously. This creates significant legal complications regarding his estate. How is that even possible? Sarah demanded. You can't marry 2 people. That's bigamy. That's illegal, Miller nodded slowly. Under normal circumstances, you're absolutely correct. However, Mr. Harrison was extremely careful and deliberate in how he structured these marriages. Your marriage, he looked at me, was registered in California. Mrs. Turner's marriage was registered in Nevada. In 1993, interstate database sharing wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is today. The system simply didn't catch the duplication. So he did it on purpose, Rebecca said. He deliberately chose 2 different states. That appears to be the case, yes. What about the will? I asked, my throat tight. What did David leave behind? Miller opened the file and pulled out several documents. Mr. Harrison's last will and testament, dated October 2022, states that all his assets are to be divided among my beloved wife and children. However, he failed to specify which wife or how many children. You're saying we have to split everything? Rebecca asked. I'm saying we have a complicated legal situation. Mr. Harrison owned 2 homes, one here and one in Riverside. He had multiple bank accounts, investment portfolios, a successful business, and life insurance policies totaling over $3 million. $3 million. I felt dizzy. We'd lived comfortably, but I'd never imagined David had accumulated that much wealth. Miller continued. The Riverside property is solely in Mr. Harrison's name. So is this property. The business was registered as an LLC under his name. Without clear direction in the will, and with 2 legal marriages, both families have legitimate claims to the entire estate. So we have to fight? Daniel asked, his voice hard. We have to go to court to prove our father loved us more? Not necessarily, Miller said. I would strongly encourage both families to work together to reach an amicable settlement. Litigation could drag on for years and consume much of the estate in legal fees. I looked across the table at Rebecca. She looked back at me, and in that moment, I saw my own pain reflected in her eyes. Neither of us had asked for this. Neither of us had known. We were both victims of the same man's deception. I think, I said slowly, that Rebecca and I need to talk. Alone. Rebecca and I sat in a small coffee shop 2 blocks from the lawyer's office. Our children had scattered to process their own shock, leaving us, two women who'd unknowingly shared the same husband for 30 years to figure out what came next. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. I hadn't touched it. Across the table, Rebecca stared out the window at the passing traffic, her jaw clenched tight. "I need to know everything," I finally said. "How you met? When? Where he told you he'd be when he wasn't with you? Everything." Rebecca turned to look at me. "I need the same from you." For the next 2 hours, we compared notes on our marriages to David Harrison, and with each revelation, the betrayal cut deeper. Rebecca had met David in April 1993 at a construction site where her father worked as a foreman. David had just started his own small contracting business and was charming, ambitious, and persistent in pursuing her. They married a month later in a quick courthouse ceremony in Nevada, where Rebecca's grandmother lived. He said we'd have a bigger ceremony later. When the business was established, Rebecca explained, her voice bitter. That bigger ceremony never happened. I had met David 2 weeks before Rebecca did, at a friend's backyard barbecue. Our courtship had been equally swift. Within 6 weeks, we were married in a California courthouse, with David explaining that we couldn't afford a big wedding because he was investing everything into his new business. He was building 2 businesses, Rebecca said. 2 lives. David had told Rebecca he worked mainly in Southern California, which required him to be away Monday through Wednesday each week. He told me he worked primarily in Nevada and Arizona, requiring him to travel those same 3 days. The geography of his lies was perfectly constructed. Did he ever miss important events? I asked. Birthdays? Anniversaries? Rebecca thought for a moment. He missed Daniel's 8th birthday, said there was an emergency at a job site. He made it up to us the next weekend with an elaborate party. She paused. What about you? He missed our 15th anniversary, I said, the memory flooding back. Last-minute client meeting he couldn't reschedule. He took me to Hawaii the following month to apologize. We sat in silence, both realizing that David's emergency had probably been my anniversary dinner, and his client meeting had probably been Daniel's birthday party. He'd been juggling us like plates, keeping both spinning without either of us falling. The money, Rebecca said suddenly. I need to understand the money. David gave me $3,000 a month for household expenses. He said the business revenue was unpredictable, so he couldn't guarantee more than that. He gave me $4,000 a month, I said. Same excuse about unpredictable revenue. $7,000 a month in household expenses, plus mortgages on 2 homes, utilities for both properties, insurance, vehicles. David must have been making extraordinary money to maintain both families so comfortably. And according to the lawyer, he'd been squirreling away millions we knew nothing about. I want to see your house, Rebecca said abruptly. I need to see how he lived with you. The request felt invasive, but I understood it. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. We drove separately to my house, Rebecca following in her black sedan. As we pulled into my driveway, I saw my home through new eyes. The white picket fence David had installed, the rose bushes he'd planted, the porch swing where we'd sat together on countless summer evenings. Had he replicated all of this at Rebecca's house too? Inside, Rebecca moved through the rooms like a detective at a crime scene. She stopped in the living room, staring at our family photos on the mantel. David and me at the Grand Canyon. David teaching Michael to fish. David dancing with Sarah at her medical school graduation. He took us to the Grand Canyon too, Rebecca said quietly. 2008. He said it was his first time there. My stomach turned. We went in 2007. Rebecca moved to the kitchen. She opened a cupboard and pulled out a plate from our everyday dishware set. I have these exact plates, she said, her voice hollow. Same pattern. He said he bought them at a home goods store near one of his job sites. We went upstairs to the master bedroom. Rebecca stood in the doorway for a long moment before entering. She walked to David's side of the bed and opened his nightstand drawer. Inside were his reading glasses, a Tom Clancy novel, and a bottle of aspirin. He kept the same things in his nightstand at our house, Rebecca said. She picked up the reading glasses. Same brand, same prescription. In the closet we found more duplicates. The same brand of dress shirts in both our houses. The same style of casual jeans. The same running shoes. David had literally lived the same life in 2 different locations, down to the smallest details. He was like an actor, Rebecca said, playing the same role on 2 different stages. We drove to Rebecca's house in Riverside. The neighborhood was similar to mine, suburban and comfortable. Her house was slightly smaller but equally well maintained. The front garden had roses just like mine. The porch had a swing just like mine. Inside, the similarities were uncanny. The living room furniture was different, but the layout was nearly identical. Photos of Rebecca's family lined the mantel, exactly where mine were positioned in my house. In the kitchen, I found the same dishware set, the same coffee maker, even the same brand of dish soap under the sink. He was living the same life twice, I said, feeling dizzy. Everything's the same. In Rebecca's bedroom, I saw the same nightstand setup, the same reading glasses, the same Tom Clancy novels. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something far more disturbing. David hadn't just cheated on both of us. He'd created two identical existences, as if we were interchangeable parts in his manufactured life. Rebecca pulled a photo album from her bookshelf. I want to show you something. She opened it to reveal vacation photos. Disney World, 2010. David with his arm around Rebecca and their 3 children in front of Cinderella's castle. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my photos. Disney World, 2009. David with his arm around me, with Sarah and Michael in front of the same castle. He took both families to Disney World, Rebecca said. A year apart. Probably used the same hotel. Maybe even the same restaurants. We spent the next hour comparing photos. Beach vacations to the same destinations. Skiing trips to the same resorts. He'd even taken us both to Italy, Rebecca in 2015 and me in 2016, staying at the same hotel in Rome, visiting the same tourist sites. He had a formula, I realized. He perfected each experience with one family, then repeated it with the other. Rebecca's daughter Emma came home while we were looking at photos. She stopped in the doorway, surprised to see me there. Mom, what's going on? Margaret and I are trying to understand your father, Rebecca said. Come here, honey. There's something you need to see. We showed Emma the duplicate photos, the identical house setups, the parallel lives. Emma started crying. Dad was crazy. He had to be mentally ill to do something like this. Or just a narcissist, I said. Someone who wanted 2 of everything. 2 families, 2 wives, 2 complete lives, all orbiting around him. My phone rang. It was Sarah. Mom, where are you? You've been gone for hours. I'm at Rebecca's house. We're comparing notes. I'll come there, Sarah said. Michael, too. We need to talk about this together. An hour later, both families were gathered in Rebecca's living room. My 2 children and her 3 children, all of them David's kids, all of them meeting for the first time as adults. The atmosphere was tense and surreal. Daniel, Rebecca's oldest, spoke first. I'm trying not to be angry at you guys. This isn't your fault. But it's hard looking at you, and knowing Dad chose to split himself rather than just being with one family. He didn't split himself, Sarah said. He duplicated himself. There were 2 dads, one for each family, and neither version was entirely real. Michael had been quiet, but now he spoke up. Did any of you ever meet Dad's parents? His family? Rebecca and I looked at each other. He said they were dead, I said. Died in a car accident before we met. That's what he told me too, Rebecca confirmed. What if they're not dead? Michael asked. What if that was another lie? What if there are relatives out there who know the truth? The thought had never occurred to me, but now it seemed obvious. If David had lied about everything else, why wouldn't he lie about his parents? We should hire a private investigator, Emma suggested. Find out if there are other secrets. Other families, other lies. The idea made me feel sick, but she was right. How could we possibly know the full extent of David's deception without investigating? Rebecca made coffee while we discussed next steps. We needed to inventory all of David's assets. We needed to search his business records. We needed to check if there were other properties, other bank accounts, other hidden pieces of his double life. The office, I said suddenly. His business office downtown. Have any of you been there? Everyone shook their heads. David had always said his office was too boring for visits, that it was just a small space with files and furniture. We should go there, Rebecca said. Tomorrow. All of us. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about David's parents. Were they alive? Did they know about both families? Had they been complicit in his lies? At 3 a.m., I got up and went to my computer. I'd never searched for David's parents before because I'd believed they were dead. But now I typed Richard Harrison and Martha Harrison into Google, along with David's birthplace in Ohio. The search results shocked me. Obituaries, but not from decades ago. Richard Harrison had died just 5 years ago. Martha was still alive, living in a nursing home in Cleveland. David's parents weren't dead when we got married. They'd been alive the entire time. He'd been visiting them, and he'd never told either of us. I called Rebecca immediately, not caring about the hour. David's mother is alive. His father died 5 years ago. He lied about them being dead. Oh my God, Rebecca breathed. Did he take them money? Visit them? I don't know. But we're going to find out. The next morning, both families met at David's business office. a small suite in a downtown office building. We had the keys from his effects. The office was exactly as he'd left it. Desk with a computer, filing cabinets, a small conference table. We started searching. In the filing cabinets, we found business contracts, invoices, project files. Everything seemed legitimate. But then Daniel found a locked drawer in David's desk. Anyone have a key for this? We tried every key on David's key ring. None worked. Finally, Michael used a letter opener to jimmy the lock. Inside was another set of files. Bank statements for accounts none of us knew existed. Property deeds. Insurance policies. There's a storage unit, Emma said, holding up a rental agreement. Unit 347 at Secure Store on 5th Avenue. He's been paying for it for 15 years. What would he keep in a storage unit? Sarah wondered. Let's find out, I said. The storage facility was 10 minutes away. We showed the rental agreement and David's death certificate to the manager, who gave us access. Unit 347 was a 10x10 space. Climate-controlled, not inside were boxes. Dozens of cardboard boxes, neatly labeled with years, 1993, 1994, 1995, and so on, all the way to 2023. We started opening them. The first box, labeled 1993, contained 2 sets of files. One labeled M and one labeled R, Margaret and Rebecca. Our entire lives, organized and archived. My hands were shaking as I opened the M file. Inside were copies of every document from my life with David. Our marriage certificate, Sarah's birth certificate, Michael's birth certificate, photos, letters I'd written him, cards I'd given him. He'd kept copies of everything. Rebecca opened the R file. Same thing. Her marriage certificate, her children's birth certificates, photos, letters, cards. He documented both lives, Daniel said, like he was keeping records of an experiment. We kept opening boxes. Each year was meticulously archived. Both families, side by side, our lives running in parallel without ever touching. Then Emma opened a box labeled 2010 and gasped. Inside was a third set of files, labeled C. Oh no, Rebecca whispered. Please no. I pulled out the C file with trembling hands. Inside was another marriage certificate. David Michael Harrison and Catherine Williams. Marriage date, June 15, 2010. Location, Arizona. There was a third wife. This can't be happening, Sarah said. This can't be real, but it was real. The documents were official. The marriage was legal. David had not just maintained 2 families. He'd had 3. In the file were photos of Catherine, an attractive blonde woman in her 40s. Photos of David with Catherine. Photos of a child, a little girl, maybe 10 years old now. He had another daughter, I said, my voice breaking. A third family. Michael was pacing, his hands clenched into fists. How? How did he manage 3 families? We found the answer in more files, a detailed schedule printed and laminated. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Rebecca in Riverside. Thursday, Friday, Catherine in Phoenix. Saturday, Sunday, me in California. The business trips he'd taken weren't vacations. They were rotations between 3 separate lives. That's why he died, Daniel said suddenly. The stress. 3 families. 3 mortgages. 3 sets of lies. His heart couldn't take it. We searched the rest of the storage unit. There were no files labeled D or any other letters. It appeared to be just the 3 of us. But how could we be sure? We need to find Catherine, Rebecca said. She needs to know David is dead, and she needs to know about us. The file contained an address in Phoenix. We decided to drive there the next day, all of us together. 2 families about to meet a third. That night, Rebecca and I sat in my kitchen with a bottle of wine neither of us was really drinking. I wasted 30 years, I said. 30 years loving a man who didn't exist. We both did, Rebecca replied. And apparently Catherine wasted 13 years too. Do you think he loved any of us? I asked. Or were we all just possessions to him? I don't know if someone capable of this can really love anyone, Rebecca said. Love requires honesty. David wasn't honest about anything. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard about David's death. We need to talk. Catherine. She'd found out. Somehow she already knew. And she was reaching out to us. I showed the text to Rebecca. She took my phone and typed a response. We know about you. We're coming to Phoenix tomorrow. We need to meet. The response came immediately. I'll be waiting. And I have things you need to see. Things about David that will change everything. What could possibly change everything more than it already had? What secrets could be worse than 3 wives and 6 children? We were about to find out. The drive to Phoenix took 6 hours. Rebecca rode with me while our children followed in 2 separate cars. Neither of us spoke much during the journey. What was there to say? We were driving to meet our husband's third wife, a woman who'd been part of his life for 13 years without any of us knowing. The absurdity of the situation had moved beyond shock into a kind of numb acceptance. Catherine's address led us to a modest townhouse in a quiet Phoenix suburb. The yard was well maintained with desert landscaping, cacti, and colorful succulents arranged in artistic patterns. A child's bicycle leaned against the garage door, evidence of the life David had built here, separate from the lives he'd built with Rebecca and me. Before we could knock, the door opened. Catherine Williams stood in the doorway, and I was struck by how different she looked from both Rebecca and me. She was blonde and petite, where we were brunette and average height. Her style was more casual, jeans and a simple blue sweater. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed with the same grief and betrayal that I saw in my own mirror every morning. "Margaret." "Rebecca," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Please come in." Her townhouse was smaller than either of our homes, but beautifully decorated. Photos lined the hallway. David with Catherine, David holding a baby girl, David at a child's birthday party. Another life, another family, another set of lies. A little girl, perhaps 11 or 12, sat on the couch watching television. She had David's dark hair and his brown eyes. Another daughter, my children's half-sister. "Lily, honey, go to your room for a bit," Catherine said gently. "Mommy needs to talk to these ladies." Lily looked at us with curious eyes, but obeyed without question. Once she was gone, Catherine gestured for us to sit. Our children remained standing, a protective wall behind us. "I found out about David's death 3 days ago," Catherine began. "A friend saw the obituary and called me. When I read it, I saw that he was survived by his wife Margaret and 2 children. That's when I knew there were others." "You didn't know about us?" Rebecca asked. "Not until he died," Catherine said. "David told me he'd been married before, to a woman named Helen who died in a car accident. He said you two were his first real love after tragedy. He said he traveled for work. That's why he was only here Thursday and Friday each week." I believed every word. Another lie, another fictional dead wife to explain his absences. David's creativity and deception was almost impressive in its audacity. "How did you meet him?" I asked. Catherine poured coffee for all of us with shaking hands. 2010. I was working as a real estate agent in Phoenix. David came to me looking for properties for his construction business. He said he was expanding into Arizona. We started dating within a month. He proposed after 3 months, said he'd waited his whole life to find someone like me after losing his first wife. I felt sick. While David was celebrating his 17th anniversary with me and his 17th anniversary with Rebecca, he was courting a third woman with tragic stories about a fictional dead wife. "The wedding was small," Catherine continued. "Just us and a few friends in Arizona. David said he didn't want a big ceremony because it would remind him too much of what he'd lost with Helen." She laughed bitterly. I thought I was being sensitive to his grief. "I was actually just another dupe in his collection. Did he support you financially?" Rebecca asked. "He gave me $2,500 a month for household expenses," Catherine said. "Said his business revenue was unpredictable. I kept my real estate job because I needed the income. Now I understand why. He was supporting 3 households on 1 income stream. No wonder he was stressed all the time." Sarah spoke up from behind me. "Did he ever miss important events? Birthdays? School plays?" Catherine nodded. "All the time. He missed Lily's kindergarten graduation. He missed my 40th birthday. He always had excuses. Emergency client meetings, last-minute site inspections. I made excuses for him to Lily. Daddy works very hard so we can have nice things." "What a joke." "Catherine," I said carefully, "you texted that you had things to show us. Things that would change everything." Catherine stood and walked to a desk in the corner. She pulled out a large manila envelope and returned to her seat. "After I found out David died, I started going through his things that he kept here. I found this hidden in the back of his closet." She opened the envelope and spread its contents across the coffee table. Passports, 4 of them, all with David's photo, but different names. David Harrison, David Mitchell, David Thompson, David Williams. 4 identities, Catherine said. 4 complete sets of documents. Driver's licenses, social security cards, credit cards. He wasn't just living multiple lives. He had multiple legal identities. Daniel picked up one of the passports. "This is sophisticated. These aren't fake. These are real government-issued documents. I think David had been planning this for years," Catherine said. "Maybe even before he married any of us. These documents date back to the late 80s. Rebecca was pale. If he had 4 identities, could there be a 4th family? The question hung in the air like a threat. We'd found 3 wives, but David had 4 sets of identity documents. The math was horrifying. I searched for David Williams online, Catherine said. I found an address in Seattle, a house purchased in 2015 under that name. I haven't had the courage to go there or call, but I think you need to know it exists. Seattle. Another city, another possible family. I felt like I was falling down an endless well of deception with no bottom in sight. Michael had his laptop out. I'm searching property records right now. His fingers flew across the keyboard. There, 1842, Willow Creek Drive, Seattle, Washington. Purchased by David Williams in August 2015. Last property tax payment made in January of this year. Someone's living there, Emma said. If the taxes are being paid, someone's maintaining that property. We have to go there, I said. We have to know. But Catherine held up her hand. Wait, there's more. I found bank statements. David had accounts under each name. He was moving money between them, always keeping just enough in each account to avoid attention. But there's one account, under the name David Mitchell, that has over $5 million in it. $5 million. On top of the $3 million the lawyer had mentioned. David had hidden $8 million across multiple identities and accounts. Money that rightfully belonged to his children, to his families. Money he'd kept secret while giving each of us modest monthly allowances. Where did all this money come from? Sarah asked. His construction business? Catherine pulled out more documents. Some of it, yes. But look at these. Insurance claims. Life insurance policies. He had a policy under each identity. Each one listed a different beneficiary. She spread out the insurance documents. David Harrison's policy beneficiary, Margaret Hayes. David Mitchell's policy beneficiary, Rebecca Turner. David Thompson's policy beneficiary, Catherine Williams. And David Williams's policy beneficiary, someone named Jennifer Cole, with a Seattle address. There is a 4th wife, Rebecca whispered. Jennifer Cole in Seattle. And each policy is for $1 million, Catherine added. He insured each identity separately. It's like he was setting us all up with golden parachutes for after he died. Or he was planning to fake his own death under one identity and start over with another, Daniel suggested darkly. The room fell silent as we absorbed this possibility. Had David's heart attack been real, or had it been convenient timing for a man who wanted to disappear? No, we'd seen his body. The hospital had confirmed his death. He was truly gone. But the fact that we even had to question it showed how deeply his deception ran. We need to go to Seattle, I said firmly. We need to find Jennifer Cole. And then we need to take all of this to the police. What David did wasn't just morally wrong. It was fraud. Identity fraud, insurance fraud, possibly tax fraud. What about his mother? Emma reminded us. She's still alive in Cleveland. She must know something. Rebecca pulled out her phone. I'm calling her right now. She dialed the nursing home number we'd found online. After being transferred several times, she was connected to Martha Harrison's room. Rebecca put the call on speaker. Hello? An elderly woman's voice, weak but alert. Mrs. Harrison? My name is Rebecca Turner. I was married to your son David. Oh, David's wife. How wonderful to hear from you. Is David with you? He hasn't visited in a few months. Rebecca's voice was steady. Mrs. Harrison, I'm sorry to tell you that David passed away 2 weeks ago. Heart attack. A long silence. Then sobbing. My boy. My baby boy. We waited while Martha cried. Finally, Rebecca spoke again. Mrs. Harrison, I need to ask you something important. Did you know David was married to more than one woman? Another long silence. Then quietly, I knew. The room erupted. You knew? I grabbed the phone from Rebecca. This is Margaret Hayes. I was also married to David. You knew he had multiple wives and you never told anyone? Martha's voice was defensive now. It wasn't my place to interfere. David was happy. He provided for everyone. He told me you all knew about each other and agreed to the arrangement. He said you were all modern women who didn't believe in traditional marriage. That's a lie, I said harshly. None of us knew about the others until he died. He deceived all of us for decades. Oh, God, Martha's voice broke. Oh, God, I should have said something. I should have known he was lying. But he was my son, my only child. I just wanted him to be happy. Did you know about Jennifer Cole in Seattle? Catherine asked. Jennifer? Yes. He married her about 8 years ago, I think. Such a sweet girl. Is she there with you? No, Catherine said. We haven't met her yet. We're going to Seattle tomorrow. Please tell her I'm sorry, Martha said. Tell all of you I'm sorry. I didn't know you didn't know. I failed you all. I failed my son by not stopping him. We ended the call. Martha Harrison had known David had multiple wives and had said nothing for years, choosing to believe his lies rather than confront the truth. She'd enabled his deception through her silence. That night, we made plans. All three families would travel to Seattle together. We'd confront Jennifer Cole and finally see the full scope of David's betrayal. Then we'd contact the FBI. David's multiple identities and insurance policies constituted federal crimes. But there was one more thing we needed to do first. We needed to search David's main office more thoroughly. If he'd hidden passports and bank statements at Catherine's house, what else might be hidden at his business headquarters? The next morning, we returned to David's office in California. This time, we searched more aggressively. We pulled out drawers completely, checked for false bottoms, looked behind filing cabinets. Michael found it. A small safe hidden inside a cabinet marked cleaning supplies. It required a combination. We tried David's birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary dates. Nothing. Finally, Sarah tried Lily's birthday, and the safe clicked open. Inside were more documents. Property deeds for houses we hadn't known about. Bank statements for accounts in the Cayman Islands. And a journal. David's journal, with entries dating back to 1992. I opened it to the first page. David's handwriting, younger and neater than in his later years. January 1992. I've decided to do it. To live the life I want without compromise. Why should I choose between being a family man and being free? Why can't I have multiple families, multiple lives? Society says it's wrong, but society is afraid of ambition. I'm not afraid. I'm going to build the life I deserve. I flipped through the pages. Entry after entry detailing his philosophy, his planning, his justifications. March 1993. Met Margaret at a barbecue. Perfect candidate. Stable, kind, wants children. She'll make an excellent wife. Met Rebecca last week through her father. Also perfect. Different personality from Margaret, but equally viable. I can make this work. He'd evaluated us like job applicants. Decided we were suitable for his purposes. The clinical coldness of his words made me want to scream. More entries. 1995. Sarah born. Margaret is a good mother. Rebecca is pregnant with Daniel. Timing worked out perfectly. I'll have 2 children the same age. Neither wife suspects anything. 2010. The business is doing well enough that I can support a 3rd household. Met Catherine. She's younger, more independent. This will be different from the others. A challenge. 2015. Why stop at 3? Jennifer in Seattle seems promising. I'm 59. How many lives can I fit into one lifetime? Let's find out. The journal was evidence of premeditated, calculated deception spanning over 30 years. David hadn't stumbled into this situation. He'd planned it from the beginning. We were never his loved ones. We were his project. Rebecca was crying silently as she read over my shoulder. Catherine sat with her head in her hands. Our children looked horrified, reading about their father's cold manipulation of their mothers. He was a monster, Daniel said flatly. We need to accept that. Our father was a monster who destroyed lives for his own entertainment. We photocopied every page of the journal. Then we packed everything, all the documents, all the evidence, into boxes. Our next stop was Seattle, and after that, the FBI. The flight to Seattle took 3 hours. None of us spoke much. We were beyond shock now, moving in a kind of automated determination. We would see this through to the end, whatever that end might be. Jennifer Cole's address led us to a beautiful craftsman house in a nice Seattle neighborhood. The yard had a garden, roses in full bloom. A tire swing hung from a large oak tree. Another life, another family, another woman who thought she knew David Harrison. I rang the doorbell. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Jennifer Cole was younger than the rest of us, maybe 45. She was tall and athletic with short red hair. Her eyes widened when she saw the crowd of us on her doorstep. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "Are you Jennifer Cole?" I asked. "Were you married to David Williams?" Her face went pale. "How do you know about David? Are you from the police?" "No," Rebecca said. "We're his other wives." Jennifer's knees buckled. She grabbed the doorframe for support. "Other wives? What are you talking about?" We showed her everything. The marriage certificates, the passports, the journal. Her face moved through shock, disbelief, denial, and finally, crushing acceptance. "I married him 8 years ago," she said in a hollow voice. "He said he was a widower. His wife died of cancer. He was so sad when he told me the story. I thought I was helping him heal." Another tragic lie. Another fictional dead wife. David's creativity and deception never faltered. Do you have children? Catherine asked gently. Jennifer nodded. Twin boys. They're 7 years old. They're at school right now. She started crying. Oh God, what do I tell them? How do I explain that their father wasn't who we thought he was? We sat in Jennifer's living room, 4 wives united in betrayal, and told her everything. With each revelation, she became more distraught. David had given her $2,000 a month for household expenses. He'd told her he traveled for business Monday through Wednesday. The same pattern, the same lies, replicated a 4th time. There's more, I said carefully. David had life insurance policies. Each wife was designated as a beneficiary for $1 million. You're entitled to that money. Jennifer looked disgusted. I don't want his blood money. He bought those policies thinking they'd what? Make up for the lies? Keep us all quiet after he died? The money belongs to your children, Sarah pointed out. David's children. All of them. There are 9 of you now. 9 children. David Harrison had fathered 9 children with 4 different women, and none of the children had known about their siblings until their father's death. We need to go to the authorities, Daniel said. This is criminal. Identity fraud. Insurance fraud. Probably tax evasion. The FBI needs to investigate. And the press, Emma added. This story is too big to hide. People need to know what he did. No, I said firmly. Everyone looked at me. Not the press, not yet. Think about the children. All 9 of them. Do you want them growing up with this scandal following them forever? Having their father's crimes replayed in every Google search of their names? Mom's right, Michael said. We report it to the FBI. We cooperate with their investigation. But we don't go public unless we have to. Over the next several hours, we pooled all our information. 4 families creating one comprehensive timeline of David Harrison's 30-year deception. We had enough evidence to bury him legally, even if we couldn't bury him morally since he was already dead. The FBI agent we met with, Special Agent Cordova, was initially skeptical. But as we laid out the evidence, her expression shifted from doubt to astonishment. I've been investigating fraud for 15 years, she said, looking at the spread of documents across her conference table. I've never seen anything this elaborate. Multiple legal identities, separate families maintained simultaneously, complex financial structures. This is unprecedented. What happens now? Rebecca asked. We investigate, Cordova said. We'll need to interview each of you separately, get complete statements. We'll audit all of Harrison's accounts, trace every transaction. If there are criminal proceeds, we'll seize them. They'll likely end up distributed among you and the children as restitution. How long will this take? Catherine asked. Months, maybe a year. This is complex, but I can tell you that you'll get justice. Harrison might be dead, but his estate will pay for his crimes. We spent 3 days in Seattle, giving statements to the FBI. They interviewed our children, reviewed every document, photographed every piece of evidence. They promised to keep our names out of the press as long as possible, though they warned us that once charges were filed against the estate, some publicity would be inevitable. On our last night in Seattle, the 4 of us, Margaret, Rebecca, Catherine, and Jennifer, sat together in Jennifer's living room with a bottle of wine. I still can't believe this is real, Jennifer said. I keep expecting David to walk through the door and explain that this was all a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Rebecca said bitterly. We were married to a con artist. A very good one, but still a con artist. I've been thinking, Catherine said slowly, about forgiveness. Should we forgive him? He's dead. Hating him doesn't hurt him anymore. It only hurts us. I don't know if I can forgive him, I said. 30 years. He stole 30 years from me. From all of us. He didn't steal them, Jennifer said quietly. We lived those years. We raised our children. We built careers and friendships. Yes, our marriages were lies. But our lives weren't entirely lies. We were real, even if he wasn't. Her words struck something in me. She was right. I'd been so focused on David's deception that I'd started to see my entire life as fraudulent. But Sarah and Michael were real. My career as a teacher was real. My friendships, my accomplishments, my joys and sorrows, they were all real. David had lied about who he was, but he couldn't erase who I was. I think, Rebecca said, that we need to help each other move forward. We didn't choose to become sister wives, but here we are. We're connected now through our children, through this shared trauma. We can be enemies or we can be allies. Allies, Catherine agreed. For the sake of the kids, if nothing else. Allies, Jennifer said. I looked at these three women who'd unknowingly shared my husband for years. We were so different, yet we'd all fallen for the same man's lies. We'd all built lives around someone who didn't exist. And now we had to rebuild, separately, but together. Allies, I agreed. 6 months later, the FBI concluded their investigation. David Harrison had committed multiple felonies: identity fraud, insurance fraud, tax evasion, and bigamy. His estate was seized, and after legal fees, approximately $12 million was distributed among the 4 wives and 9 children. The story leaked to the press eventually. Construction magnate's secret: 4 wives, 9 children, 30 years of lies. We did one joint interview, all 4 wives together, telling our story on our own terms before the tabloids could twist it. The interview went viral. We received thousands of messages from people who'd experienced similar betrayals, though rarely on such a scale. Our story became a cautionary tale, but also, strangely, a story of survival and female solidarity. Today, 3 years after David's death, the 4 of us remain close. We celebrate holidays together so our children can know their siblings. We've started a nonprofit helping victims of long-term deception and fraud. We call it the Truth Foundation, and it's funded by David's money, the money he'd hidden away while giving us modest allowances. As for me, I'm 71 years old now. I've stopped wearing my wedding ring. I've started dating again, cautiously. I've learned that trust is earned slowly and lost quickly. I've learned that the person you sleep next to every night can be a complete stranger. And I've learned that survival isn't just about enduring. It's about transforming pain into purpose. Sometimes I wonder if David ever felt guilty. If, in those quiet moments between his lies, he ever considered telling the truth. But then I remember his journal, those cold, calculated entries about choosing us like business investments. He didn't feel guilt. He felt satisfaction at pulling off the impossible. But here's what David never understood. He didn't win. He died alone in a hospital bed, and when the truth came out, his legacy became one of betrayal and deception. His children don't mourn him. They mourn the father they thought they had, the one who never existed. Meanwhile, we 4 wives have built something real from his lies. We've created a family of choice, bound not by law or romance, but by shared experience and mutual support. We've taken the worst thing that ever happened to us and transformed it into strength. At my husband's funeral, a woman approached me and said, "I'm his wife too." That moment destroyed everything I thought I knew. But it also freed me to discover who I really was beneath the lies, and that, perhaps, is the only gift David Harrison ever truly gave me. If this story touched you, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing stories that uncover the hidden truths of everyday life. There are many more waiting to be told. Thank you in advance for being here. Now tell me, what would you do in this person's place? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please share them with me in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you all think. With heartfelt gratitude, until next time, Mrs. Clara.